On my birthday, my wife gave me a guide titled, How to Speak Better in Public. She said it was just a little help so I wouldn't make a fool of myself at dinner with her family that night. When I tried to tell a story, she interrupted me, imitating my stutter. Her father said, "We could put subtitles on him." I'll never forget my 30th birthday, not for the celebration, but for the exact moment my marriage began to crumble before my eyes. My wife, Laura, 34, handed me a box wrapped in bright blue paper. We were having breakfast in our small kitchen. Fresh coffee and toast. The morning light streamed through the window as she looked at me with that smile I now recognize as condescending. "Open it," she said, her tone a mix of enthusiasm and something else I couldn't identify then. I unwrapped the gift carefully. It was a book. When I saw the title, I felt as if I'd been punched in the stomach. How to Speak Better in Public. Overcome Stuttering and Insecurity in 12 Weeks. Interesting, I managed to say, trying to keep my expression neutral. The knot in my throat tightened. "It's just a little help," she replied, touching my hand. "So you don't make a fool of yourself tonight at dinner with my parents. You know how my dad is about these things." For context, I've stuttered since I was 13. It's not severe, only noticeable when I'm nervous or tired. For years of marriage, and Laura had always treated it as something cute or endearing, until that day. "Thanks," I replied, and I hated that even then my voice betrayed me. Laura gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "You're welcome, honey. I just want them to see you as I see you." And how did she see me? As someone who needed to be fixed. My in-laws' house has always intimidated me. It's one of those two-story residences in an exclusive neighborhood, with furniture that looks like it came out of a magazine and makes you feel guilty just for sitting on it. My father-in-law, Roberto, is an executive at an advertising firm, and my mother-in-law, Carmen, is a university professor, both with the kind of education they use as a weapon. The birthday dinner was a small but formal affair. My sister-in-law, Isabel, was also there with her husband, a lawyer who never remembers my name despite having met me dozens of times. Everything was going relatively well. The food was delicious. Carmen always hires a catering service for these occasions, and the wine was flowing generously, perhaps too generously. And then I started telling a story about a client at the accounting firm where I work. The guy tells me he's been keeping his receipts in the refrigerator because he thought they'd be safer there. I felt Laura's gaze before I heard her, and then she interrupted me, brutally exaggerating my stutter. The poor David had to explain to him that the papers get ruined by moisture. There was an awkward silence. Then my father-in-law let out a laugh. "Could we put subtitles on him?" he said, raising his glass to me in a mocking toast. Everyone laughed. Isabel almost spit out her wine. Isabel's husband, Andres/Antonio, nodded as if it were the best joke he'd ever heard. Carmen tried to hide her laughter by covering her mouth with her napkin, but her eyes shone with amusement. Laura laughed louder than everyone. I sat petrified, a frozen smile on my face. I felt the heat rising in my neck, my ears burning. In that moment, something inside me switched off like a light. I simply took my glass, emptied it in one gulp, and poured myself more wine. "What?" Laura asked when she noticed I wasn't joining in the laughter. "It's a joke, honey. Don't be so sensitive." The rest of the night passed in a kind of fog. I spoke as little as necessary, smiled when it seemed appropriate, and drank more than I should have. With each sip of wine, I felt myself drifting further away from the woman sitting next to me, from her family, from the life we had built together. The drive home was silent. Laura drove, humming along to some song on the radio as if nothing had happened. I stared out the window, remembering other similar moments I had ignored or forgiven. Like when, during an important job interview, Laura had prepped me by asking tricky questions until I started stuttering, and then said, "Better practice more. I don't want them to hire you out of pity." Or that time at a gathering with friends when she interrupted my story about our trip to the beach to translate what I was saying, as if my way of speaking were some foreign language she was kindly interpreting for others. Small moments, 1,000 small cuts. "Was the night okay?" Laura asked as we entered our apartment. "Dad likes you more and more." I didn't answer. I went straight to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a man I didn't recognize. A man who had allowed his worth to be determined by the fluency of his words. That night, while Laura slept soundly beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Something had broken between us, something fundamental. And the worst part was I wasn't sure I wanted to fix it. Have you ever felt like your voice, your true voice, didn't matter? That the person who supposedly loved you most in the world was actually ashamed of you? I didn't know it then, but that ridiculous birthday book would be the catalyst for the most transformative 6 months of my life. The weeks after my birthday became a succession of unsolicited help from Laura. The book on public speaking appeared strategically positioned in different places around the house. Next to my toothbrush on my nightstand, beside my favorite coffee mug. I just want the best for you, she'd say when I confronted her about it. Is it wrong to want my husband to succeed? Her help went beyond the book. She started correcting my pronunciation during casual conversations, sending me links to YouTube videos about fluency exercises, even bought a stopwatch to measure how long it took me to complete certain sentences. All under the banner of concern and love. Her family, of course, were the perfect accomplices. At every family gathering, which I now dreaded like the plague, innocent comments would arise. Are you reading that book yet? My brother used to stutter and he took acting classes. Now no one notices, Isabel would comment while passing the salad during a Sunday lunch. In business, David, image and communication are 90% of success. Roberto, my father-in-law, would pontificate without anyone asking for his opinion. It's not personal, it's business. And Carmen, my mother-in-law, with her false empathy. It must be so frustrating for you, not being able to express yourself clearly. Laura has so much patience. What none of them understood or didn't want to understand was that my stutter had never been a real impediment in my career. I was a senior accountant at a respectable firm. My clients valued my meticulousness and honesty, not the speed with which I pronounced the numbers. My boss had promoted me twice in 4 years. But in the microcosm of my marriage and Laura's family, I was some kind of incomplete project, a diamond in the rough that needed constant polishing. The most painful part was our growing economic distance. Laura had recently been promoted to marketing director at her company, with a considerable salary increase. She now earned almost twice as much as I did, a fact she subtly mentioned in discussions about expenses or financial decisions. We could buy that new sofa we want so much, I'd suggest. With what money exactly? She'd reply, raising an eyebrow. Don't worry, I'll pay for it as always. That as always weighed tons. The breaking point came 3 months after my birthday. I came home after work and found an envelope on the dining room table. Inside was a receipt for enrollment in a professional public speaking course. 12 sessions Saturday mornings starting that weekend. What is this? I asked when Laura entered the kitchen. Surprise! She exclaimed enthusiastically. I enrolled you in that course I told you about. The instructor is fantastic. He has experience working with people with your condition. I stared at her, looking for some indication that she was joking. My condition? You mean my speech impediment? She replied, taking a bottle of wine out of the refrigerator. You don't have to thank me. Consider it an investment in our future. Something inside me snapped. Laura, I said, measuring each word, concentrating on not stuttering. I don't have a condition, and I don't need you to enroll me in a course without consulting me. Come on, David, she replied, rolling her eyes. It's not a big deal. If you don't like how you are, change it. It's simple. The problem isn't how I speak, I said, feeling a growing heat in my chest. It's how you treat me because of it. How do I treat you? She asked, genuinely surprised. I'm helping you. God, you're so ungrateful sometimes. Do you have any idea how much this course costs? It's 750 pesos that came out of my pocket, not yours. The conversation devolved into what our arguments always devolved into. Me trying to explain why I felt hurt, her minimizing my feelings and transforming herself into the victim of the situation. That night, while Laura slept, I made a decision. I wouldn't go to the course she had chosen. Instead, I would find help on my own terms. The next day, during my lunch break, I called 3 therapists specializing in speech disorders. The third, Dr. Miranda Soto, had a cancellation that same afternoon. I want to be clear, I told her during our first session. I'm not here because I'm ashamed of my stutter. I'm here because I want to understand why I allow others to make me feel ashamed of it. Dr. Soto, a woman in her 50s with red-framed glasses and a warm smile, nodded. That's a very important distinction, David, and a good place to start. For the next few weeks, I kept my sessions secret, telling Laura I was working late or meeting friends from the gym. Busy with her promotion and new responsibilities, she barely noticed my absences. In therapy, I discovered that my problem had never been my speech, it was my self-esteem. Dr. Soto taught me breathing techniques and vocal exercises. Yes, but more importantly, she helped me rediscover my inner voice, the one that had been silenced by years of small humiliations and unwanted help. Stuttering doesn't define your value as a communicator, she told me during our 6th session. Your ideas, your empathy, your honesty. Those are the true tools of communication. For months after starting therapy, something unexpected happened. My boss asked me to present our new tax services at a meeting with potential clients. 20 people in the conference room, all hanging on my words. I applied everything I had learned. I breathed deeply, focused on the message, not the delivery. And although I stuttered a couple of times, I continued with confidence, without apologizing for the way I spoke. At the end, 3 companies requested our services. My boss was delighted. "Excellent work, David," he said, patting me on the shoulder. "Very convincing. You have a gift for explaining complicated concepts simply." That night, when I casually mentioned my successful presentation during dinner, Laura looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and something else. "Jealousy? Are you serious? You giving a presentation?" she asked, in a tone that was meant to be light but sounded like pure condescension. "And how did you manage the? "Quite well, actually," I replied, keeping my voice even. "My boss thinks I have a talent for it." "Well," she said, taking a sip of wine, "I guess that book I gave you is finally paying off, huh?" I didn't tell her about the therapy. I didn't tell her about the internal work I was doing. I let her believe what she wanted to believe. 2 days later, while looking for our passports to renew them, I found something disturbing in Laura's drawer. A small notebook with her unmistakable handwriting. It contained a list titled "Topics David Should Avoid in Public." Stories about his family, too long he gets stuck. Jokes, loses the rhythm in the punchline. Anything technical about accounting, impossible to understand when he stutters. Politics, gets nervous and is a disaster. The list went on, detailing each of my supposed deficiencies as a communicator. She wasn't just trying to change me. She was actively censoring me, deciding which parts of me were acceptable for public consumption. I closed the notebook and left it exactly where I had found it. A cold realization settled in my stomach. The woman I had married didn't want me to improve for my sake. She wanted to mold me into someone who wouldn't embarrass her carefully constructed image. That night, as I watched Laura meticulously prepare for a work dinner, choosing each accessory with surgical precision, rehearsing anecdotes in front of the mirror, I wondered when the appearance of our relationship had become more important than the relationship itself. And for the first time, I allowed myself to consider a life beyond this stifling marriage. In the following 2 months, our marriage became a strange dance of distancing. I attended my therapy sessions weekly, now without bothering to hide them, simply saying I was going out. Laura, too busy with her new management position to question my absences, and at home we coexisted like 2 polite strangers sharing a space out of convenience. Conversations were limited to logistics. Who would buy groceries when we would pay the bills, what we would do on the weekend. Physical contact had almost completely disappeared. The most revealing thing was how Laura reacted to my small professional successes. Every time I mentioned an achievement, a satisfied client, praise from my boss, a successful presentation, her face would tense into a forced smile. "That's nice, honey," she'd say automatically, and then change the subject or worse, eclipse my news with some more impressive achievement of her own. One night, after announcing that I had been selected to lead a new project with our most important client, Laura barely looked up from her phone. "Great," she murmured, swiping her finger across the screen. "By the way, did I tell you I'm organizing the national launch campaign? 6-figure budget, totally under my control." It was at that moment that I understood. This woman would never celebrate my victories. In her narrative, I would always be the flawed husband who had to be tolerated, never an equal worthy of admiration. Secretly, I began to prepare my exit. I consulted a lawyer about divorce options, researched apartments for rent near my work, transferred a portion of my savings to a personal account. Small steps towards freedom. Dr. Soto helped me prepare a script for the inevitable confrontation. We practiced different scenarios, from denial to anger to emotional manipulation. Remember, she said, your stutter may intensify in high-stress situations, and that's okay. The important thing isn't perfect fluency, but staying firm in your decision. I had everything planned. I would ask for a divorce the following Friday, after we had both finished the work week. I had booked a hotel room to spend the weekend, giving her space to process the news. On Monday, I would start moving my belongings. But on Thursday afternoon, while I was in an important meeting, my phone started vibrating insistently. 6 missed calls from Laura in less than 10 minutes. When I finally checked, I saw a text message. Call me now, urgent. I left the conference room, my heart racing. An accident? A medical emergency? Despite everything, the idea that something serious had happened to her churned my stomach. I dialed her number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then to my surprise, another voice answered. David, it's Carmen, Laura's mother. I froze in the office hallway. The phone pressed against my ear so hard it hurt. Carmen? What's going on? Is Laura okay? A sob on the other end of the line. No, she's not okay. She had a horrible fight with her boss today. They threatened to fire her if she doesn't deliver the perfect campaign by tomorrow. She's devastated, David. I've never seen her like this. I took a deep breath. A work crisis, not an accident, not an illness. A work crisis. She's locked herself in her old room, Carmen continued. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. She barely let me in to bring her some tea, but I know she'll listen to you. There was a pause, and then the plea that would become a turning point in my life. Please come see her. She needs you now more than ever. I closed my eyes in that silent office hallway, with the distant hum of printers and the murmur of conversations behind closed doors. A moment of perfect clarity came. I remembered all the times Laura had humiliated me publicly. I remembered the notebook with the list of topics I should avoid. I remembered every time she had minimized my achievements or treated my way of speaking as a shame that needed to be corrected. And finally, I remembered the promise I had made to myself in therapy. Never again will I allow anyone to make me feel inadequate for being who I am. Carmen, I said, surprised by the firmness of my own voice. I'm so sorry for what Laura is going through. I truly am. So you'll come, right? Roberto can pick you up.
No.
I answered with a single word. 2 letters.
No stuter.
What did you say? She asked, clearly bewildered. I said no, Carmen. I'm not coming. But she's your wife. She needs you. Laura doesn't need me, I said, each word coming out with crystalline clarity. She needs someone to validate her, to tell her that she's right and everyone else is wrong. And I can't be that person anymore. David, I don't understand. We're talking about an emergency. No, Carmen, we're talking about a pattern. Laura has a crisis and we all have to come running. But when I've needed support, understanding, or simply basic respect, where has she been? Where have you been? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I don't know what you're talking about, she finally murmured. I know. And that's exactly the problem. Before she could respond, I continued. Please tell Laura I'll be home tonight to talk. It's time we had an honest conversation about our marriage. You're telling me you're going to abandon my daughter when she needs you most? Carmen's voice rose, indignant. No, Carmen. I'm saying that for the first time in a long time I'm choosing myself. Have a good day. And I hung up. I stood there in that anonymous office hallway, feeling the weight of years of self-deprecation lift from my shoulders. My heart was pounding, but not with fear or anxiety. It was pounding with the energy of self-determination. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't the one who stuttered. This time it was Carmen who was speechless. That night when I got home, Laura was already there, sitting on the sofa, her eyes red and her expression oscillating between fury and disbelief. My mother called me, she said as soon as I walked through the door. How could you? How could I what, exactly? I asked, hanging up my coat calmly. Abandon me on the worst day of my professional life. I sat down opposite her, keeping some distance. Laura, I'm sorry about your difficult day. Genuinely. But we need to talk about something more important. More important than my career at stake? I could lose everything I've worked for. Yes, I replied simply. More important. Our marriage. What followed was the most honest and painful conversation of our lives. I told her about how her help had made me feel inadequate for years, about how the mockery at my birthday had been a breaking point, about the notebook I had found. At first, she denied, then minimized, then defended herself, accusing me of hypersensitivity, the usual pattern. But this time I didn't give in. I didn't apologize. I didn't back down. I want a divorce, Laura, I said finally. This is over. She stared at me open-mouthed. I think it was the first time she really saw me, not as the project that needed perfecting, but as a complete man who had made a decision. You can't be serious, she whispered. I've never been more serious in my life. And all because of a stupid birthday book? Because of a few innocent jokes? No. Because of a constant pattern of contempt and humiliation. For turning something that is part of me into a public embarrassment. For making me feel like my voice, stuttering or not, has no value. We spent hours talking that night. She cried, yelled, negotiated, threatened. She went through all the stages of grief in record time. Finally, as dawn began to peek through the windows, she seemed to accept reality. I never thought you'd really leave, she said, her voice barely a whisper. That was always the problem, Laura. You never really saw me. A year has passed since that night. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. It was surprisingly civilized considering everything. My life has changed in ways I never imagined. I have a small but bright apartment near a park. I've been promoted to manager at my job, leading a team of 5 people. I still attend therapy, though now bi-weekly. I also attend a support group for people with speech disorders, not because I feel I need fixing, but because I found community and understanding there. I even help teenagers who are dealing with bullying because of the way they speak. My stutter is still there. It appears when I'm tired or nervous. And that's okay. It's part of me, like the color of my eyes or the shape of my hands. Laura contacted me once, a few months after the divorce. A simple text message. I'm truly sorry. Not for the divorce but for everything that came before. I didn't reply. Some apologies come too late. Last week, while giving a presentation to the entire company staff, over 100 people, I stuttered several times. I didn't apologize. I didn't stop. I wasn't ashamed. I simply continued. At the end, I received a standing ovation. My boss told me afterwards, David, what makes your presentation so convincing isn't that you speak perfectly. It's that you speak with conviction. That night, as I walked home, I thought about that birthday book, How to Speak Better in Public. How ironic that the real gift wasn't the book itself, but the chain of events it set in motion, the journey towards reclaiming my voice, not the physical one but the internal one, the one that says, I am valuable just as I am. Sometimes I think about Carmen's call, that perfect moment of clarity when I said, no without hesitation. Sometimes I wonder if you think I took too long to say that simple word. What I've learned is that effective communication has nothing to do with technical perfection. It has to do with authenticity, with allowing yourself to be heard, stutter included, and with surrounding yourself with people who value what you say, not just how you say it. And that is perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes love isn't about fixing the other person. It's about listening to them as if they were already worthy. If anything, what I've learned throughout this process is that true love never tries to fix you. Authentic love accepts you as you are, with all your peculiarities, with all your rhythms, with all your pauses. It took me too long to understand that my stutter wasn't a flaw that needed to be corrected, but simply a part of who I am, and that I deserved to be with someone who looked beyond how I pronounce words to truly hear what I'm saying. Sometimes the bravest act isn't staying and enduring for love, but having the strength to say no and choose yourself. That day, when I answered my mother-in-law with a firm no, I wasn't just rejecting an unfair request, I was reclaiming my dignity. Today I can say that my voice, with all its imperfections, is stronger and clearer than ever. Not because I no longer stutter, but because I finally understood that I deserve to be heard.